July was the deadliest month this year for law enforcement as it saw 14 officers lose their lives in the line of duty. No month this year has seen fewer than 8, with the state of Louisiana recording the most with 7. In 2022, it was Texas and New York that recorded the most, and Louisiana reported only 2 all year. We lost 5 officers this past week, and 5 additional officers were reported injured by gunfire. Lieutenant Michael Wood of the Newerry Police Department in South Carolina, end of watch Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Lieutenant Michael Wood was killed in a vehicle crash at the intersection of Nance Street and Dixie Drive while responding to a call. His patrol car collided with a tractor-trailer in the intersection. Lieutenant Wood had served with the Newerry Police Department for 20 years. He is survived by his wife and 2 children. He was 48 years old. Deputy Sheriff Alejandro Martinez of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, end of watch Friday, July 28, 2023. Deputy Sheriff Alejandro Martinez succumbed to injuries sustained on November 16th of 2022 as he and other recruits from Academy Class 464 ran in formation as part of their morning physical fitness routine. The Academy class of 75 recruits was running in formation when an oncoming vehicle veered into the center line and struck the group near the intersection of Mills Avenue and Telegraph Road in Whittier. A total of 25 recruits were struck by the vehicle before it came to a stop. 12 of the recruits suffered critical injuries that ended their careers. Deputy Martinez was sworn in as sheriff's deputy 2 weeks after the incident. He remained hospitalized in critical condition until succumbing to his injuries 8 months later. The driver who struck the group was initially charged with attempted murder of peace officers, but charges were dropped as the investigation continues. Deputy Martinez was a U.S. Army National Guard veteran and had served with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for only 8 weeks at the time he was injured. He is survived by his father and sister. He was 27 years old. Sergeant William Cherry of the Macon County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee, end of watch Saturday, July 29th of 2023. Sergeant William Cherry was killed in a vehicle crash on Highway 10 near Long Creek Road about 12:30 a.m. He was traveling southbound when an oncoming vehicle crossed the center line and struck the patrol car head-on, causing him to suffer fatal injuries. The other drivers sustained severe injuries. Neither Sergeant Cherry nor the other driver were wearing their seatbelts. Sergeant Cherry had served with the Macon County Sheriff's Office for 5 years and had served in law enforcement for more than 10 years. He had previously served with the Red Boiling Springs Police Department, Clay County Sheriff's Office, and Salina County Sheriff's Office. He is survived by his wife, children, grandchildren, and parents. He was 55 years old. Deputy Marshal Barry Giglio of the Ville Platte Marshal's Office in Louisiana, end of watch Monday, July 31st, 2023. Deputy Marshal Barry Giglio was shot and killed at about 8:30 p.m. while assisting the Evangeline Parish Sheriff's Office serve a warrant in the 100 block of West Beauregard Street. A subject at the residence opened fire on the officers, killing Deputy Marshal Giglio and critically wounding a sheriff's deputy before being shot and killed. Deputy Marshal Giglio had served at the Ville Platte Marshal's Office for 10 years and previously served with the Evangeline Parish Sheriff's Office for 15 years. Sergeant Pedro Torres Santos of the Trujillo Alto Municipal Police Department in Puerto Rico, end of watch Monday, July 31st of 2023. Sergeant Pedro Torres Santos was shot and killed in a targeted drive-by shooting as he stood in front of a store with other officers while working a secondary employment job. He and 2 other officers were standing in front of the store at the intersection of Highway 181 and Highway 851 in Trujillo Alto when a vehicle drove by and occupants inside opened fire on them. All 3 officers were struck by gunfire. Sergeant Torres Santos succumbed to his wounds, and the other 2 officers were seriously wounded. The subjects in the car fled and remain at large. Sergeant Torres Santos had served with the Trujillo Alto Municipal Police Department for 27 years and was one of the first officers when the agency was formed. He is survived by his wife and children. He was 47 years old. And now we're going to look at the officers that were injured by gunfire. And we're going to start with one officer that was injured in the same incident in Ville, Platte, Louisiana, that Deputy Marshal Barry Giglio had been injured in. That was our first officer that was injured in that same incident. And then we'll go on to Whittier, California, where we had a female officer that was injured by a male 25-year-old Edgar Gonzalez, and he was injured and arrested in this incident. Whittier Police Department officer and an armed murder suspect was wounded Monday night in a shooting. The shooting occurred at about 8:30 p.m. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, police were conducting surveillance on the murder suspect, identified as 25-year-old Edgar Gonzalez. When they pulled over the car, he was driving in an alley. Gonzalez refused to get out of the car before running away. Shots were fired during the chase, and Gonzalez continued south on Pickering Avenue before tossing away the semi-automatic gun. A police dog was deployed, and officers used a 40-millimeter baton round on Gonzalez before he was taken into custody. The officer was shot in the lower body. Gonzalez was shot in the hand. Both the officer and Gonzalez were hospitalized, and injuries that are not considered life-threatening. The officer, whose name was not released, is in good spirits. So that was a typical story that we see where they get in a foot chase with these guys, and these guys start firing at them, and they fire back. And luckily, in this incident, the officer was okay in that one. So we're going to move on to Erie, Pennsylvania, where our officer, Patrol Sergeant David Strucke, he's 42 years old, he was injured by 27-year-old Patrick Gleba, who was unharmed and arrested in this incident. According to the city, multiple Erie police officers responded to a report of gunfire made about 4:50 a.m. Sunday. While police searched for evidence of gunshots and witnesses, someone fired at them from inside a residence. The patrol sergeant was struck once in the leg and then took cover while other police officers returned fire, according to the city. Officers performed emergency medical aid on the wounded sergeant and transported him to UPMC Hammett. The city said the suspected shooter eventually left the house to surrender. Police said the unidentified suspect was wearing ballistic armor and was uninjured. So you get these guys that they're actually, it's almost like they're trying to get in a fight with the police. I mean, this guy, if you're all like decked out with ballistic armor on and you're shooting at the officers, we're ready for a fight. And fortunately for this officer, he was struck in the leg, and it sounds like he's going to be okay. It says he underwent surgery on Sunday and is listed and stable in the intensive care unit. So it sounds like he's, at least for the time being, he's doing okay. Let's move on to Logan, Ohio, where we have Deputy Jason Miles that was injured, and our suspect, Stephen Hardbarger, got a picture of him, unharmed and arrested. A Logan police officer and K-9 were injured. Oh, they didn't mention the K-9. And K-9 were injured after a hail of gunfire after responding to a domestic violence situation on Sunday. On Sunday, July 30th, 2023, deputies from the Hocking County Sheriff's Office responded to a domestic violence call at Stephen D. Hardbarger's residence. The caller stated Stephen Hardbarger, a 44-year-old male, had a gun and was threatening to kill other family members when deputies arrived at the scene. An adult female and juvenile female were able to flee the residence and were taken to a secure area. A juvenile male was unaccounted for at the time. Hardbarger started firing at uniformed deputies with at least one firearm from inside and around the residence. During the discharging of firearms, Hardbarger, at least one round, struck Deputy Jason Miles in the hip area. A deputy used a rifle to provide cover while the other deputies extracted Miles to a safer location. Deputy Jason Miles drove the adult female and juvenile female away from the scene to meet with Hocking County Emergency Medical Service. The suspect, Stephen Hardbarger, continued to fire additional rounds at deputies and other law enforcement officers that arrived on the scene. The projectiles fired by the subject struck several officers, cruisers, and 2 Logan Police Department cruisers. One of the Logan Police Department cruisers was struck, contained a Logan Police K-9 unit, Officer Rambo, who was injured by one of the projectiles. The suspect was taken into custody at approximately 20:53 hours, so 8:53, and transported to the Southeastern Ohio Regional Jail. They're investigating the incident, and the injured deputy and K-9 officer have been medically treated, released, and are recovering at home. So this is, I mean, these guys, you hear about this stuff more on, if you watch movies, than you do on the news. Because I don't think people realize how often this happens, that these police officers arrive on these calls. This is a domestic violence call, which they call the worst ones that you can go on because you don't really know what you're walking into. But they don't probably expect it to turn into this full-on shootout like this. And on any of these calls, these officers can be injured. And this one, luckily, both the officer and the K-9 were okay. But you know, I don't think they'd cover this stuff on the news enough to make it clear. So, I mean, people have this negative view of police officers, and they have no idea how bad a police officer's job can be and what they go through on any given day at any given moment throughout that day. I mean, they go on just a regular call, or they try to pull a car over or anything, and it turns into a shootout. And, you know, people, you know, all that whole defund the police and all that, people don't realize really what officers go through. They have no idea. They see things, oh, they did this and they did this on the news that makes the officer look bad, but they don't see all the bad things that people do to the officers. All right, we're going to go on. This is our last one, I think. This one's in Tualatin, Oregon, and our deputy was injured, and 34-year-old Kristofer James Graves, that's our suspect, he was killed in this incident. A Washington County Sheriff's deputy was shot and critically injured Wednesday morning after serving an eviction at an apartment complex. The accused shooter is dead. It's not immediately clear how the suspect died. The incident started at about 9:30 a.m. When the Washington County Sheriff's Office was serving a civil eviction at the Forest Rim Apartments. About 10:20 a.m., deputies said they were fighting with someone inside the apartment. Seconds later, there was gunfire. One of the deputies was shot several times. The deputy was flown to a trauma center in a life flight helicopter ambulance. He is listed in critical but stable condition. At least one deputy returned fire. The sheriff's office has not publicly identified the wounded deputy, but Sheriff Pat Garrett and staff at Legacy Emmanuel is doing everything they can to help him. And about 12:50 p.m., the suspect was found dead inside of an apartment. And that's about all we got here on this one. So that's another one. You know, these guys, they're serving an eviction notice. Okay, this is something that happens every day. You serve eviction notices. And they get fired upon. They get in a fight with the guy inside somehow, and shots are fired. And an officer is injured. And I think they need to tell these stories, not the ones that, oh, an officer did something bad. Because they can tell those stories too, but you can't just tell one side of the whole thing and not tell the other side. The officers' lives are in danger literally as soon as they put that uniform on. Their lives are in danger. Every single call they go on, every car they pull over, their lives are potentially in danger. And nobody talks about this stuff. The news certainly does not. And unless you live in one of these areas, and even if you live in one of these areas, the news probably covers it for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And then you don't hear about it again. But you don't hear about across the country just how much this happens. But if a police officer shoots the wrong person, it's national news. Everybody knows about it. But in the reverse, when it's being done to police officers day in and day out, I just went through 5 officers that lost their life and 5 officers that were injured by gunfire just in the past week. Just in 1 week. Now, anything they say that officers do to people, criminals, there maybe that many are being killed by police in a week and we're not hearing about it. Maybe they are. But most of the time when these criminals are killed in the presence of an officer, a lot of the times they're taking their own lives or they're being shot by somebody else there. And it's not always the police officer that's the one that's shooting them. But they'll point it out when the police officer does. But they won't point it out when it's the criminal that's doing it to the officer. Well, that's all I got for you today. If you like this kind of stuff, hit that like button, leave a comment in the comments section, and if you're not already, consider subscribing. I do these types of videos every Thursday with the week's injuries and officers that have fallen in the line of duty. And if you hit the like button, it helps the YouTube algorithm to send this out to more people so more people can hear about this stuff and what the police actually go through on any given day.